Hello, good evening. How are you?
Hello. Oh,
We've got Karen Black. Awesome. I've literally just scoffed my bolognese, ladies, and marched upstairs. So we'll wait a couple of minutes till everybody's here. I always like to start group calls, whether it's team or clients, off with some wins. So if either of you, I know Karen's getting herself sorted, so Lucy, you're in the spotlight. What's going well just now? What do you want to celebrate with us, whether it's TDL related or work related or something totally different?
we survived the Easter holidays.
I
We're
think
all
that's
alive.
worthy of a win for sure. Remind me, what age are your little ones?
7 and 9.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
So,
nice ages though.
yeah, and we had an extra week on the start with COVID with my daughter off. So she's been at home for 3.5 weeks now. So yes,
Oh
been a
my
long holiday.
gosh, that's tough going, isn't it? And thank you for sharing your win with us. Karen's one of our level 10 ladies. So level 10 ladies get access to graduates, but they tend to, I think a lot of them listen to the replay, but not often be here. So it's great that Karen's able to be here with us. Karen, I think you got your earpods in probably because you're smiling. It looks like you can hear me. What's your win? I think you're muted. Oh, and she's paused. So I'll give it probably till maybe 5 past just to see who else joins us before I do start, because I think there were another couple of ladies that were going to be here with us. But what did you think of today's topic, courage?
Courage, yes. I've always thought I'm a bit of a wuss, really. No, I wouldn't call myself a courageous person in general. Yeah.
And what makes you say that?
Um, and I've always been quite shy and never want to sort of put myself forward for things.
And is that something that you would like to change or you're quite happy with?
I would like to be a little bit more sort of courageous. It would be nice to be. Yeah. I mean, doing something like this would have has sort of helped push me, because just taking that first step to joining TDL, I think, really was courageous for me to do that. And I know it would be for a lot of the ladies that join, but yeah, I think it would be nice to have a bit more guts sometimes, put myself out there.
And I think the other part as well is, I think sometimes, don't know if you ladies would agree with me saying this, but I think sometimes it's like not allowed for women to be courageous. Like that's a more of a masculine thing, or that word courageous can be like such an overpowering, overwhelming word. Because when I thought the word courageous, I was like, oh, I'm not that. I'd rather somebody else goes first. Give you an example. On holiday in Egypt, this is a really great example, actually. Well, I think it is. There were people up doing salsa dancing, like in their bikinis beside the pool. And I'm not body conscious, but I cannot dance. I really can't dance. And I hate the thought of people watching me and just me being a complete numpty, right? And just like stamping on people. Some folk are really good at these things. I'm not, I don't play any team sport. I'm not very coordinated. So I thought no, I'm not going to do that. That's not really for me. And then I thought, well, is it for me? Because actually, I really quite like the idea of being able to do it. I don't want to go through the process of the pain to actually get to do it in case other people judge me or make a numpty of myself. And I really thought about, what is that? Is it fear? What's stopping me? Why am I holding myself back? I'm never going to see these people again. Actually, this is a really great opportunity. And I was quite bored, just kind of lying there in the sun lounger. And it gets really hot when you're just lying there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really, really, really interesting. The next day they were doing belly dancing. So I went up and I did it, and Martin videoed me. It's really embarrassing. Maybe I'll post it sometime. But then I was proud of myself because I pushed myself and I set that goal. And that's a courageous thing to do. Although it seems like a trivial example, for me, these things still come up, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'd masked it by thinking, oh, I told myself I didn't want to do it, but actually I did. I just didn't want to go through that judgment piece. And we all have to start somewhere. We all have to go through that, oh, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? Right, okay, well, this is the decision. This is what I want to do. If I want to get there, I have to go through the pain. You can't go around it, can't go under it. Got to go through it, like that song they sing in Girl Guides. We're going on a bear hunt.
I know it went off by heart.
Karen, I don't know if you're able to chat or unmute yourself. I know you got kicked out last time, but I wanted to hear your win. If it was going to allow you to.
I think I'm unmuted now. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
I think I have once met Lucy already. I'm just down in the park down beside our house. I suppose my win today is that I've done more than my 10,000 steps. This is my third walk today. I'm just delighted with this weather. I can't stop wanting to go outside. It's so nice. There's not even wind. So yeah, I'm delighted to have got all my steps in today. So that's my win. Feels really good to get some sunshine.
That's
Really
great effort. Such a good effort. So impressed with that. And I know, Karen, you had something you wanted to share. I wasn't sure if you were going to share it before the call, if you wanted to share it on the call, but now's probably...
No, it's probably not really for the graduates call. It's probably more of a vulnerability call issue, to be honest. Okay. I'll save it, I think, Aileen.
Save it, super. Okay, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's really interesting to listen to reflections on courage in general, because I think I'm probably a bit like, you know, what Lucy says, doing TDL probably does make you a wee bit braver, but I would say for years now, I'm probably quite bulshy at work. I'm a social worker and you have to survive. So that sort of masculinity element is actually really helpful if you can let that bit of your character come out in social work. You kind of have to do a bit of that. But in my personal life, I'm actually not as assertive, or probably haven't always been as assertive, and it normally results in some degree of personal torture to get my point across. But eventually, it does always happen eventually, but I think I could probably cut that off at an earlier stage if I was just a bit more courageous and nip things in the bud sometimes. So it's an interesting one.
That's really interesting, because some people really struggle to have that separation between the personalities and work and home, but actually you manage that really well. But it sounds like you wonder if you could take some of the work bits into home, but maybe like subtle it down a little bit.
Yeah, it would have to be dialed back a notch, I think. Yeah, otherwise they wouldn't recognise me.
Absolutely. And what about you, Lucy? What about you in work compared to home? And I am listening. I'm actually going to grab a book on courage that I meant to dig out before we started this conversation.
Well, I think because I work in preschool, so I'm with young children, it's not really, obviously we have to make sure they're behaving and be able to shout over a room of 23 and 4-year-olds, but it's not really I wouldn't say it's that kind of job where you really need to put yourself out there. And yeah, although we do have to sort of sit and sing silly songs and dance and all that kind of thing, but you know that you're in a room full of children that aren't going to judge you on that.
And so I wonder then about the whole like looking after other people's children. I think that's a very courageous thing to do. Telling other people's children off, that's a courageous thing to do. I'm sure there's situations and scenarios where you have to go and speak to the parents about a situation that's occurred or happened, or, you know, a bump on the head or whatever it is. And all parents are different and react differently. You know, some of them be like, oh, that's fine. The other one's like, oh, my precious child, what have you done to them? And that's courageous too.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, I never really thought of it that way. Yeah.
And it depends, I think, as well, how you actually define courage. So this whole conversation came because I read a book recently called, can't see, it's flipped, Courage is Calling. And I didn't buy the book because the book called to me or I felt I needed courage at that time. but I love this author. I love Ryan Holiday. I've read all of his books. Not that he's written that many, but his books are based on Stoicism. And to me, I think Stoicism's like quite complicated and kind of intellectual, and that's not usually my type of read. I like a really easy read, and I'm quite easily distracted when it comes to reading. But I do like his stuff, and I like his sentiments, and I like his ideas, and I like his beliefs, and I like his values. So I bought the book. So I was like, oh, Ryan Holiday's got a new book. So I bought it. And then I started reading it. Oh, you okay, Karen?
I was just wondering if they could hear everything or not, the people that just passed me, but they can't.
Oh, I thought you'd fallen down a hole or in a puddle.
No. I just don't trust my AirPods, so I think I was ducking my head thinking that they were listening to everything you were saying about your book, but they're not.
And for this, courage wasn't really a concept that I thought about all that much, if I'm being completely honest. But then, like you, Lucy, I hadn't really realized when I was needing to be courageous or step up and be courageous. And while I was reading the book, these situations and scenarios came into my life, and I was like, oh, I get it now. So the book is lots and lots of little short chapters, and it gives examples of stuff that's happened in history, and lots of people that I probably heard of at school and can't even remember, like, oh yeah, I know that anymore. I heard of that war. I'm not very good at history. But the bit at the end is where Ryan Holiday talks about when he was courageous. So the company that he worked for fell apart because basically the CEO sounded like a bit of a dictator, and he got kicked out. But Ryan Holiday had expressed that he wished he'd been able to talk up sooner. There were years where he should have spoken up sooner, and this CEO was trying to leak pictures of a past relationship, and Ryan said, no, I'm not doing that. But he didn't actually stop the event from occurring. So he knew that it was bad and it was wrong ethically and morally and legally, and he said he would have no part to play in it, but he didn't take more steps to actually stop it happening. And then he reflected, thinking, I could have done more. And sometimes I think in life, we think, oh, somebody else will deal with it. And I certainly used to feel like that sometimes in healthcare and medicine, that it was like, oh, that's not how things should be done. But you don't want to be the one to put your hand up and cause a stink type thing. So Ryan Holiday is one of these people that I don't know if you guys have heard of him. I'd never heard of him before, maybe a year ago, but a lot of people look up to him. He's very, very well recognized and prestigious. And I'm reading this book going, oh, I feel so in awe of him. Like, he's such a courageous person. I wish I could be more like him. Like, how can I be more courageous? Or, looking at situations in my life and thinking, maybe I didn't get that right. And then at the end, it says here, I wrestled with that even more as I wrote this book. I thought, am I qualified? Am I allowed to write about courage, having never saved anyone's life outside of 911 calls and giving somebody CPR on the pavement outside a bar? And it goes on to say, I haven't always been courageous. I'm not always courageous. I hesitated even to write this chapter, and some people told me not to include it. But then I remembered that hesitation ought to steal your resolve. I can say earnestly that I'm getting better at the timeless challenge of applying courage to real life. I care less of what people think today than I did yesterday. I step forward more often than I slink back. Writing and publishing my book is an example of that, but I'd like my private life and my private actions to speak louder than my words. And it finishes with, courage calls to each of us. Will we answer? Or maybe that's too much. Can we get better at answering? Can we step up more times than we step back? Let's start there. So it's not like suddenly you are the front of the army and you run into battle. It's about making these small steps and these small choices to push yourself forward, and maybe not doing the salsa one day, but you're doing the belly dancing the next day. And maybe you're the worst at the group of 15, because honestly, there were some ladies that I'm pretty sure were like professional belly dancers, not belly. And it's about that experience. And it's not about, oh, okay, now I know how to belly dance. It's about putting yourself out there and connecting with others and being humble and allowing yourself to learn from the experience. Any thoughts? Because I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, I think I can probably relate it to a time of mine went out to Uganda last year to do some teaching over our summer holiday. And the photos that she shared of like the welcome that she got from all the local teachers and the kids, no mirrors, no shame. They're all dancing, singing at the top of their voices, just delighted, happy people with not half the issues or hang-ups that we have. And she was like, wow, she just came back and said, I'm just going to live my life and just dance now. They're just so happy. And not all this nonsense about, changing your trousers 40 times because do they fit or whatever before you leave the house just doesn't apply to them. It wouldn't even enter their heads. It's a total third world problem, first world problem, just all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's very humbling for her.
That's so interesting, Karen.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Lucy?
I don't know. I think sometimes I probably look at my daughter and see what she's like and think, oh, I'd like to be a bit more like her. She's always dancing around and she tells me, oh, I'm beautiful, and she thinks she's great. And I just think I'd like to be a bit more like Emily sometimes.
And maybe that's what you need to do is again, be more like her, but also step into the childish version of ourselves. I think it's Amy Cuddy's book Presence that talks about this, how we get to a certain age in life and we celebrate to a certain age. You maybe know this actually, Lucy, in the line of work you do, when we go, yay! But we get to a certain age where it's like not socially acceptable to do that. And suddenly we realize we have arms and we shrink. So we're like, that's wonderful. Maybe we need to be more childish and celebrate our childish side. And what a better time to do that than with your kids.
Yeah. I'd say in the short space of time that I've known the two teenagers that belong to my partner have morphed from that stage, where when I first met them, they would just said, oh, we're going up to Abbeymoor tomorrow and we're going to go quad biking or we're going to go and do this. So they would have been like, yeah, falling over the living room. And now it's like, are we, looking at their phones, when we're coming back, what we're having for tea. It's like, oh, how did that change so quickly, just in the space of 3-4 years? It's really sad, but that overreaction is all gone. So sad.
I know it's hard, and they go through these different chapters and phases of life, and so do we. And I think kids can be a really good example as well, or stepkids can be a really good example, because we want to be the role models for them. So we want them to be fearless and courageous, and we tell them to be fearless and courageous, but then we don't always do it. Yeah. And that's the real kicker. And that was one of the things that got me on holiday as well, because Finley, my stepson, who's 13, is incredible, wise beyond years, would go and speak to anybody, knock on their door, ask for anything he wanted. He says people are jealous of him because he's so confident. I'm like, okay, be careful with that. And she just wants to hide within herself, but we're always encouraging her to go and try new things and put herself out there. But who am I to say that when I was like, no, I'm not getting up and doing that. I'm fine here, I'm reading my book, I'm really enjoying reading my book. It's a really great part in the chapter, and that was nonsense. And they didn't know that, but in here it was. I wasn't living, what's the word, congruently, or being congruent. Interesting, isn't it?
I did take my daughter to a birthday party a couple of weeks ago, and I managed to win her a prize for doing the best parents dancing.
Excellent.
That's a win. So if you think about your life, your personal life, what you're doing in TDL, your health and wellness or work, are there areas that you can identify, and you don't need to share them if you don't feel comfortable, because I know that obviously these meetings are recorded and sent to the other graduates, which is just a small group just now. But are there areas where you feel you could work on being 1% more courageous? Or entertaining the idea of like moving that step forward in the change cycle?
Always, always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would then stop you from taking action on that?
It's always fear of failure or rejection that's at the bottom of any of those things, I suppose. Fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fear of judgment's a big one. I don't know if I've ever told either of you this. I've definitely spoken about it with clients. A mentor of mine said it to me because I used to have a big problem with putting stuff out on social media. I still do. I actually genuinely hate social media, but I struggle sometimes, a lot of time, to put my message out there, my word and my TDL stuff and whatever else. And the mentor turned around to me and he said to me that the reason that you're struggling with this, the reason you're scared of people judging your content and you putting stuff out there is because you've judged somebody for it before.
Yeah.
And it's true. I've looked at people and I'm like, oh, who do they think they are doing this thing? And then I'm thinking people are doing it to me. So when you go through that fear of judgment, ask yourself, where does it come from? Has somebody said something before? Is there evidence for this? Have you made it up yourself? Have you fathomed it from somewhere? Is there a suggestion of it from somebody or somebody else? Is it true? What evidence you have that it's true? And if you think really hard, have you judged somebody for that same thing?
Probably. Oh yeah, shamelessly.
And I think sometimes we judge people for doing the thing that we want to do. Like, oh my goodness, look at those folk, they can't belly dance. I'm actually jealous that they're trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, less inclined to do that nowadays, I would hope, within myself, less inclined to compare and to celebrate the wins of others, which is quite nice.
Yes, absolutely. So you moved on from that part, but because it's still sometimes there in the background, the seed was there, it can come through as that kind of, well, fear of judgment because past version of me used to do whatever thing. So it's so interesting, so interesting. When he said this to me, I was just like, oh, and that's what helps me get over it. And I'm sure there will be people judging you, but so what? Are you going to allow that to stop you from being in the pursuit of whatever thing it is? Now, again, I keep coming back to this belly dancing example. It was not my intention to use this in this call, if I'm being honest. But it's a good kind of classic example and you get a bit of a laugh. But if we use that example, it's not a big thing. It's not a big thing. It's a very small, trivial thing. But sometimes it's about putting yourself forward for the job promotion. Sometimes it's about, Amanda Raybold's just joined us. I'll just let her in just now. Sometimes it's about asking for the pay rise. Sometimes it's about saying to your partner, that's not acceptable. I'm not going to put up with that. You can't speak to me like that, or you can't treat me this way, or whatever else. Hi, Amanda. Oh, she's muted. You're muted, girl.
Hi, sorry. I'm just so lost in time zones. So at least I'm catching the last 5 minutes.
Oh, bless you. It's all recorded. Don't worry. You'll manage to catch it back. It's good to have you here. We'll circle back to what we did at the start. I want you to share your win, if that's okay. You're on the spot, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about it.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, I'll think about it.
you have a couple of minutes. That's not a problem at all. So think about the situations and scenarios where in personal life, in work life, in TDL, maybe the question that you're scared to ask your coach or ask me or post in the group, or maybe you want to celebrate something in the group, but you're scared other ladies might think differently, or they might, sometimes people struggle to celebrate wins in the group because they're scared other people are struggling and they'll upset them. All sorts of weird and wonderful things go on for us. And the big question I always ask people is, okay, well, you know you should do this. Why is this not happening? What's the barrier to doing this thing that you should know you should do? It could be simple as drinking more water. Oh, well, I don't physically have a water bottle with me. That's different from I'm scared I get food poisoning from the water because it's contaminated. Like there can be all different spectrums of things. Amanda, have you got your win?
Yeah, and I kind of shared this in one of the threads, but I've been home for the last week. I've been visiting my parents on the other side of the country for the Easter holiday for the last week, and have been totally kind of out of my element, out of control of the food shopping, like no car, no. I feel like I just revert back to like teenage self, right? When I'm back at my parents' house. And so it's been a bit of a struggle. And I want to say, I think it was Monday, my mom was saying something about going food shopping. And I was like, Mom, can you please get this? And I just gave her a list of like 5 things that I really would have wanted her to have in the house, so that I could at least feel like I was eating somewhat of what I would be eating on my own. So that, I mean, I saw the post that I don't know exactly what has been talked about because I missed most of it, but just being courageous. I feel like it took 5 days for me to get the courage to say something to my mom about getting food that I wanted in the house. So that was good. That was a win.
I think that's a huge win.
Thank you.
And it begs me to ask you, what was the barrier to asking your mum? I can assume, I think I know what it is, but do you mind sharing a little bit about what that was going on for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much wrapped up into unhealthy diet culture that I learned from her when I was younger, and that has really kind of shaped a lot of the way I think about food, weight, body image, all of that. And so there's this fear that I have that if I bring any of that up, it's gonna just shoot off into this whole conversation that I don't want to have, that I'm not ready. I don't know if I'm not ready to have it. There's just this fear I just find myself just stopping and not wanting to talk about anything food related, anything body related, anything diet related, any of that, because there's just so much unhealthy, negative history with all of that it's hard to bring it up.
Sure. And I appreciate you sharing that. You know, there's a lot of bits to unpack there. How did she react? Did she get the things?
She did, yeah. And it was fine. And you know, she also got a bunch of things that I liked when I was younger that I maybe like wouldn't necessarily want now. And so and you know, there were a lot of comments of, you know, I got this for you and only you, me and your dad start the diet tomorrow. And it's like, okay, but it's all like, it's bananas and it's cashews, you know, like stuff like that. So yeah,
I hear you.
She ended up getting the thing, so it all ended up being fine. And there was still a little bit of what I expected too.
If you do want to chat a little bit more about that stuff on a one-to-one, I'd be happy to speak to you, because there's more bits and pieces there to unpick that I think would definitely be helpful. So ladies, thank you for joining me on our wee chat around courage. You should definitely listen to the replay, Amanda.
I will.
And I was referencing this book, Courage is Calling, by Ryan Holiday, in case you ladies were wondering the name of the book. It wasn't available in the soft copy, hence I've got this hardback one. But such an interesting read, makes you think about things differently. And I know we need to change screens to jump into the vulnerability call. No, the empowerment call, because it's a different link. So I'll see you ladies over there. And thank you for all joining in and contributing.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye. Bye, folks.